This is an office. And so is this. And this. And even this. We all recognize the typical office. But as remote work has become more accessible to many Americans, these offices may look even more familiar to us. A kitchen table, living room sofa, a kid's play fort, or a family command center. But what do these spaces say about workers, their priorities, and the state of work today? Remote, or hybrid work, has been an appealing style of work for employees since the technology and communication boom in the 90s made it a viable option. Especially for mothers and fathers, often latchkey kids of the 70s and 80s themselves, who desired to take a more active role in their children's lives. The option to be physically present for their family while still being actively at work seemed like a perfect solution. However, prior to 2019, only 6% of American workers utilized remote work, and about 3/4 of workers had never worked from home. All of that changed, of course, in 2020. In an attempt to curb the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, many employers decided to send their workforce home. And by May of 2020, over 1/3 of American workers worked from home, essentially maxing out the workforce who could work from home. Suddenly, the world was a test bed for remote work on a scale no researcher could have dreamed of. And questions abounded. Could we be as productive while working from home? Wouldn't parents begin shirking their responsibilities if they were in a space conducive to completing domestic tasks instead of completing work?
During the pandemic, there was a lot of sort of hand-wringing about the challenges that parents faced balancing work and family during periods of shutdown when their children were home and they were trying to perform their paid work tasks at the same time. And we were lacking this sort of visual, almost visceral understanding of what that experience was really like.
Imagine a worker doing their job. You most likely have a mental framework around which you can build a space in which they work. A doctor is in a doctor's office. A teacher is in a classroom. And a CEO is in a corner office. But many remote workers, across industries, don't fit into a neat mental image of what their workplace looks like. And depending on our own inherent biases or experiences, we will imagine them working in different settings than may actually be true. One might expect a mother to work at the kitchen table, while a father works in a separate home office. But these assumptions are based on long-standing gendered ideals, not reality. Especially during the pandemic, it became clear that there was a missing piece when seeking to understand what remote work is like for people, the very space they are working in. And the space in which someone works not only tells you a lot about their priorities, but can contribute greatly to worker effectiveness, efficiency, and confidence. An Italian study from 2023 found that the perception of adequate environmental comfort in the setting of remote work positively influenced engagement and remote job satisfaction, consequently reducing the perception of work-related stress. So, for some, especially remote workers in Italy, working at home adequately meets their needs. But this result was not a guarantee and might not be true for American workers. Research shows that remote work lies at a tenuous intersection between beneficial and detrimental for employee health, confidence, and well-being. On the one hand, employees feel a level of control over their environment and subsequent comfort they do not get in an office setting. They can feel more connected to their families and be bolstered by the increase in time away from work due to no commute and no grooming time for most of us. On the other hand, some remote workers report feeling isolated and stressed. They experience a lack of boundaries between work and home, and both elements suffer for it. Ergo, the remote work paradox. The question is, how can these two divergent experiences exist at the same time? And can we gain an insight into and clues to help resolve the paradox through the remote workspace itself? Dr. Jennifer Augustine is a sociology professor and researcher at the University of South Carolina, who has focused much of her career on exploring inequalities in family life with a particular focus on social class and gender. To tackle this question and others like it, Professor Augustine developed the Family Inequality Research Lab, a collaborative research group that aims to tackle big questions in a way that is approachable to a wide variety of people, from undergraduates in diverse fields all the way through sociology graduate students.
A lot of students are interested in participating in research, but they don't know how. I created FIRL so that I could situate projects there that would provide various on-ramps for students depending on their skill level and their time availability.
FIRL focused on understanding the remote work experience for parents through the lens of their spaces. Instead of relying on surveys or questionnaires, however, as is common in sociology, Dr. Augustine thought that the best way to understand the space was to analyze the space itself. Let the walls do the talking.
So we experience things in a way that's very much shaped by the place in which they occur. But sociologists don't give a lot of consideration to thinking about place and theorizing the different dimensions of it. So photography is an ideal way to capture empirically different places.
So we are getting into the houses of people who work remotely to see what kind of patterns can show us how these inequalities take place in their lives.
Over the fall semester, FIRL collected photos from over 60 work-from-home setups and has been analyzing and coding each photo by hand since then.
We conceptualize the space along 3 dimensions: the materials, the geography, and the meaning. So in terms of the materials, we would analyze different aspects of the space that allow the work to function. So I see an adequate but somewhat small work desk. I see adequate but somewhat congested technology. So there's 2 screens.
We pay attention whether they are children's art, whether children are part of the activities that are developed in this office, to materials that can give you clues to what is happening in these spaces.
The second dimension of this is the geography. So again, thinking about where the workspace is situated in the home.
Who is the worker who is occupying these spaces? Why this worker is not having a specific office for the development of activities? What type of interactions can be happening in here? And that takes us to the part of the meaning.
The meaning are the dimensions of the space that indicate what it might feel like to work there. So I see aspects of the space that might make this comfortable. And then I also see a high potential for being distracted. There may be sort of the omnipresent pressure to kind of attend to these other childcare needs, like doing their laundry and things like that, that you're being regularly reminded of because of their physical presence in your workspace.
Each workspace can be broken into hundreds of pieces, each pencil, pillow, and post-it note documented. But these items glean a deeper meaning in relation to each other. A child's stuffed animal in the chair next to the office chair, a desk sharing a room with a baby's cradle, or a desk shoved into the corner of the bedroom reveal much about our collective desire to balance work and home life, and the difficulty of doing so when the 2 are forced to share a physical space.
There were 2 main things that I expected to find. First of all, I expected there to be sort of a clear gendering in the types of spaces that parents worked in, and so far we're not really seeing that.
Honestly, we found that there's just a general issue with working from home as a whole, and that the comparison is there, but it's not the most prevalent thing that we need to be looking at.
We've seen a wider array of ways in which parents are sort of cobbling together materials in their home, creatively allocating space, and trying to make work from home work given the kind of constraints of the homes that they live in.
And also it's very interesting how some workers have decided to put their offices in the most away corner in the house, so they can establish a separation between their work routines and their family routines. Some of them close their doors during the weekends and they don't get into their offices during the weekends because they don't want to see it. They don't want to get that interruption and that cognitive dissonance in their activities with family members.
This desire to completely separate our work and home lives stems from the ideal worker norm, which posits that for organizations, the perfect worker is one who is highly available for work and puts work before all other areas of their lives. This norm reinforces the idea that work demands our complete attention, allegiance, and sacrifice. However, as home values and social expectations have changed throughout the years, the ideal worker norm grows more and more harmful. Working longer, harder, and devoting oneself entirely to work is not only detrimental to individuals, but society as a whole through its impact on family life. Families today are experiencing a time squeeze in which modern parenting norms say they must spend more active time with their children. But a larger share of family time must be devoted to work just to meet financial needs. Parents struggle to balance the desire to be an ideal worker with the desire to be an effective parent. And choosing to work from home to attempt to manage these goals seems like a potential solution. But as the FIRL research has shown, remote work, as it is today, may not offer all the answers parents need.
Sociology is very exciting because you are always going to learn something that will surprise you. So for this project in particular, we are learning how some social norms that can be very harmful for our well-being, some social norms that deepen inequalities, continue and persist even though a lot of people don't like them and don't take any from them.
It seems like people might not be able to focus when working from home, or they don't have the resources, or they just seem distracted. So that's kind of something that we didn't expect going into the project, I think.
There was one other thing that surprised us, which is just how unhealthy a lot of these spaces were. We saw a lot of parents who were working at dining room chairs that they had taken a pillow from the bedroom to try to increase the comfort. Folks that are sitting on the couch. And I think from an organizational perspective, there is a lot of investment that is made in remote technologies that allow workers to communicate remotely, to transmit data remotely, to access systems remotely. But there's not a lot of consideration of the sort of health and safety of the space in which they're working, or a lot of resources that are provided to workers to ensure that they have an adequate desk, an adequate chair.
To combat the remote work paradox and ensure that the future of remote work is beneficial to all, organizations must tackle the norms and paradoxes that encourage workers to participate in unhealthy behaviors. Only through support and flexibility will the future of work benefit us all. Research conducted at the Family Inequality Research Lab is making an impact in the field of sociology. But equally as important is the impact it is making in the lives of the students, who are given the opportunity to participate in significant and important research no matter their prior experience, year in school, or even their major.
We need people who are interested in finding answers to pressing social issues. And we also need a hands-on approach on how to do research. Students benefit, undergraduate students benefit because they are sharpening their skills, and not just for doing research, but also to be competent in their workplaces.
So I think FIRL is really good at including undergrads in that research and giving us an opportunity to see what it's like and learn and develop our research skills as a whole.
More broadly, both through FIRL and through my pedagogy, particularly when I teach undergraduate research methods, I want students to be good consumers of data. I want them to be critical when they encounter numbers, media that is sort of asserting a set of facts, and think about how those facts were assembled. What was the empirical method, or was there an empirical method that was used to generate them?
These type of programs prepare students for their real life and also help us to find answers to important social puzzles.
We are Gamecocks. We are game changers.